She's sugary, she's spice. She is everything plus nice. Take her one-on-one class and she provides the best advice. She'll take you down to the trenches, but only to lead a new way. Only for the sake of you and your legacy to establish a new day. Let's give a warm welcome to the Chief Reprimander and the Supreme Hugger, Cheese Smith.
Hello, wonderful people. Hello, Grand Rising. All that wonderful stuff. We made it to another Tuesday. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Energy Show. Listen, I know this is not my normal attire, so bear with me on today. Yes, just been a lot of moving parts, which is some great things. And so I want to share with you some of those wonderful, great things, but I had to make sure that I came to you guys today because I really want to kind of touch on a subject matter and really get you guys to kind of do some thoughts about this particular subject matter for tonight. So if you know, without further ado, go grab your pen and your paper because we love to learn here at the Energy Show and we love to write things down. Of course, research shows us that when we write things down, we remember them a lot longer. And it also serves as a reference tool. We can also go back to it and read those notes, read about those downloads on the things that became apparent to us, those gems that we heard along the way. Specifically here at the Energy Show. So again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. You could be doing anything else, but you chose to tune in here with us on today. And so I want to say thank you. One of the things I really want to make sure I share with you guys, please go grab your ebooks. We've got a couple of ebooks there on the NEarthG site. So go to nearthg.com and you can get your self-guided manual ebook, The Seeds That Were Planted, as well as the anxiety formula, how to banish worry and live a panic-free life. And guys, these two tools in particular, these two ebooks are available on nearthg.com for 20% off. What I have learned is that a lot of us and a lot of people in general don't necessarily run to materials, content, literature, unless they feel like it's applicable to them. The great thing is, you guys know here at the Energy Show, we learn a lot. And ultimately, you get it for yourself, but you also get it for other people. Because once you've mastered the skill, you want to make sure that you pass that information on to someone else so that they can master it. And then they pass it on to someone else, and therefore it becomes a domino effect. So, sometimes it's more like a thought of someone else to say, you know what, I may not deal with anxiety, but I know someone who does, my neighbor, my coworker, my niece, my nephew, my child, my teenage child. And the great thing is it has different workbook exercises, activity opportunities in each of the ebooks. So, it's not just a stagnant, just boring reading material. No, it actually gets you engaged, helps you to really master the subject matter, letting you understand who you are, what you're dealing with, how to overcome it, and then literally put it into action. So there are exercises and activities in there that's going to challenge you and ask only you those hard questions that only you can answer. So please, again, go to nearthg.com. That's INEARTHGIE.com. And you want to go to Therapeutic Journey, that category, and you want to pick up these two ebooks. And actually, I believe everything in that particular category is 20% off. So you definitely want to make sure that you grab a hold to any literature that's going to be applicable to you. We've got our co-author piece that's in there. We also have a gratitude journal. Many of you love to journal. Many of you have come to the end of your journal. You need a new one for 22. Go and just see what you need and grab it. And or again, if you have a loved one and you really want them to be better and you know that it may come better received from you. See, that's another part too is I was over to a friend's house over the weekend and I call it a field trip. We took a wonderful field trip out to their shed. And in their shed was a plethora of different things that maybe they needed, maybe they didn't need. But one thing that we have often said, but it struck a different type of thought process when it was said. They mentioned, well, it's here when I need it. And then definitely when I need it for birthdays, a gift, a Christmas gift, a wedding present, all of that. And so let's say a waffle maker was in there. they don't need a waffle maker in the house, but you know someone who might need a waffle maker. So at the appointed time, whether it's just a gift just because I'm thinking of you, whether it's a birthday gift, whether it's, like I said, an anniversary, a wedding gift, or what have you, a Christmas gift, whatever it is, it's probably better received coming from that person versus that person going to the store and get it themselves. And so I have often found that if I tell somebody, hey, go to this website and go grab that, they won't do it, right? They won't do it. But if it's someone who tunes into the Inner Chi show and that person is of value in another person's eyes, if that person says, hey, go on to energy.com and grab X, they may be more inclined because it came from them. So hopefully that helps you. But yeah, definitely go grab your literature. It's 20% off for the remaining of this week. Okay, guys? Now, and excuse me, it's allergy season. And so it's a little crazy here in Texas. But I want to talk to you guys. We talk a lot about communication. But I want to talk about the art of listening. Yeah, the art of listening. And this is going to be a 2-part show. So I will come back next week and we will cover more about the art of listening. But today I want to kind of uncover some of the barriers that, inhibit us from being active listeners. So we're talking about the art of listening, but we first want to identify what are some of the barriers that may be keeping us from being active listeners. And you may say, Chi, I didn't think after listening to tonight's show, I didn't think that I thought my listening skills were kind of up to par. But after listening to you, I might need to make sure I tune in next week and understand how can I become a better listener. What I have found in a lot of communication, whether it's a parent to child, whether it's a coworker to coworker, manager to coworker, business partners, teacher to parent, customer service over the phone via the person who's utilizing services, or whatever it may be, it is important to listen and not listen to respond, but listen to hear, because when you listen to hear, you're actually looking for the right information and details that's going to give you what you need in order to respond effectively. Does that make sense? So a lot of times when, let's say you're in a conversation with someone and, we're going to get into some of the barriers, but you might be occupied doing something else. Well, then therefore you're not giving your full undivided attention to be an active listener. So when it's time to respond, you might be responding in a way that takes the other person off course, because how did you come up with that information from what you heard? Or you were so preoccupied in your mind, you were thinking about, what's for dinner, what time you got to go pick up, Michael, whatever. You may have some of these barriers may have been and or currently may be keeping you from being an active listener. And what we have found is when you really listen to hear instead of listen to respond, and not ready to just get your point across and totally shoot down the other person, when you listen to hear, you often regurgitate back what you heard. And then that gives the speaker who originally shared the information an opportunity to give you a yay or nay. Like, yes, that's exactly what I said. Or, no, that's not what I said. You missed something. And then that gives the speaker an opportunity to reiterate exactly what they were saying. But if you were not being an active listener, you are unable to repeat back to the speaker what they said to you. So you, as a recipient of the information, you're not going to respond accordingly. Okay, you're not. And so therefore that's where miscommunication comes in, a little irritation, aggravation, because a person may not feel like they're being heard, and you may already not want to communicate or listen to someone. Listen, there's a lot of things, and we'll uncover them along the way. But we want to make sure we understand how to be an effective listener, an attentive listener. So let's talk about one of the first barriers. One of the first barriers that keeps many of us from being active listeners is just being too hasty. Yeah, we're listening to respond instead of listening to hear. So we may find ourselves speaking out of turn. We may find ourselves responding prematurely, right? And or depending on you as a recipient, where you are in your day, you may be experiencing a little bit of impatience, right? You got to go to the grocery store. It depends on, where you all are communicating. If you're trying to get out the door to leave work, or you're hurrying up with the meeting, like hurry up meeting, right? And or you're just preoccupied with some other things, which is the second one, is preoccupation. You know, when you're having conversations, you want to make sure that the time is right and that the location is right as well, right? It may not always be that perfect, but I think that it has been some of our challenges along the way. Is sometimes as a recipient of the information, you feel that that particular conversation could have been had at home, in a much more quiet area, in a much more intimate area, maybe in the car along the way going to your destination versus to once you get to the destination, because maybe the destination was meant to be a romantic destination with you and your significant other. And so you're bringing it up right when you're getting ready to walk through the door with the beautiful roses and dinner and the spread and what have you, right? So it is even with your children. Think about it. Here in the Smith household, we have an open door policy. And so we allow our children to communicate with us regarding anything. Nothing is off limits. But sometimes you're like, really, you decided to bring this up on the way going to practice? You could have shared this at the dinner table last night when we were all sitting down. And so sometimes being human, you find yourself being preoccupied with something else on your mind, your next mission, your next to do, your task list, versus to listen to the speaker sharing detailed information about a particular subject matter. So, when you find that those opportunities come up, you may want to say, hey, can we communicate with this in then the next 30 minutes, right? Or can we do this in the morning? A lot of times with communication, we just have to get it off our chest. We just got to share it. And sometimes the tone is off. As we know, communication is a plethora of things. It's the time, it's the location, it's the octave, it's the actual topic of information, it's the mental place where the receiver, may be. It's so much to take into play, and not every opportunity to communicate is going to be perfect. But again, these are some of the barriers that may prevent us from being active listeners. So number one, we talked about haste and impatience. It takes time to be a good listener, right? It's a skill set. It really is a skill set. You have to work at it just as much as you go to the gym and, increase your cardio, increase, weightlifting, muscle building. Even with muscle takes time, right? We know that muscle burns fat, and sometimes it takes some time before you start seeing that muscle mass come through, and or those inches where the muscle is overtaking the fat, so on and so forth. This is not a nutrition class, so I won't go into it too far. But it takes time. It's a skill set. Listening is a skill set, and so being hasty, rushing a conversation definitely showcases that you're not being an attentive listener, and definitely just being impatient. Well, what are you trying to really get to? Well, hurry up. Well, what are you trying to say? That does not provide proper confidence for the speaker, especially if it's a topic that's really sensitive, right? You may be on the move, but they may have just really worked up the courage to share this information. And because of maybe being impatient, they lose their train of thought, or they lose their confidence, or because of where the recipient you may be, because you're operating in impatience, they can already perceive how the conversation is going to go. So they just choose to opt out and say, oh, I'm good. Never mind. I thought I wanted to talk to you about something. It's really not important, when it really is, right? So think of those things. Have you been hasty? Have you found yourself rushing a person to communicate with you about something? Have you found yourself just being totally impatient, right? Have you found yourself being preoccupied? That's number 2. Have you found yourself being preoccupied with something else in your brain while someone is willing to talk with you? Okay. All right. You ready to keep going? Now y'all like, she is on a different vibe today. I'm just real chill, guys. I just really want to take it slow with you guys today. Because this is something that I share with my clients a lot. And more often times than not, the art of listening is a part of communication. And as we know that is more than half the battle in any type of relationship. A relationship takes 2 people. It doesn't matter, even down to little kids. When they have friends, if one friend would just know how to listen to the other friend, things would just probably be different. People want to be heard. People want to be understood. And everyone communicates differently, right? Some people are long-winded. Some people are matter of fact, get straight to the point. Some people are very detail-oriented. Some people can come across aggressive, where others may be chill. And, especially if you're dealing with an introvert, and then, like I mentioned, they really gear up the confidence to have a conversation. These are things that we will have to work on. These are the things that we have to bring to the forefront and say, if I've been operating in some of these barriers, this is probably why none of my communication with certain people haven't gone so well. And, or maybe this is why I don't talk to certain people, or maybe this is why certain people don't talk to me, right? Because again, this is what we're covering tonight is about us first. Okay. It's about us. Have I been hasty? Have I been impatient with someone who's sharing some information with me when I'm supposed to be an active, attentive listener? Have I found myself, listen, I'm all down for the multitasking. I do it myself all the time. But sometimes you got to have like that Mary Martha syndrome, right? You guys know the story where Martha was just moving all about. Okay? Moving all about in the house, doing this, doing that. There is no way she was able to listen to Jesus. Not with all she trying to, what you want to eat, Jesus? You hungry? You want a snack? What you want to drink? Well, Jesus, oh, you came at the wrong time. I'm trying to clean up the house. I got to get this house clean. I'm dusting. You know what? Jesus, hold your feet up. I'm vacuuming. Pull your feet up. Scoot over there. Okay. Do you mind sitting over there on that couch, Jesus? Because I gotta dust these pillows real quick. That's what Martha was doing. And of course, I'm paraphrasing. But what was Mary doing? Being an active listener, giving her undivided attention to the speaker that was getting ready to share some knowledge and information. See, when we're preoccupied, when we're doing things, we miss out on maybe the important details about maybe our next level, our next step. When you find yourself being preoccupied and you understand that this is a very much so important conversation, just stop what you're doing. Just stop what you're doing, and or be polite. We have gotten so aggressive these days and mean and hateful. Well, what you want? Well, hurry up. I don't have time. I'm getting ready to jump on this train. I gotta go. I'm finna pick up these kids, and they gonna be hollering in the back, and I'm not gonna be able to hear you. What you want right now? Are you being serious? If you find that you are at a place where you really can't have, you really can't provide your undivided attention, just politely ask, can I call you back in 30 minutes when I get to the house and get settled? Or, hey, I don't want you to lose a thought. This conversation sounds very important to you. Can we talk around 8 o'clock tonight? Where, look, I've gotten, the dinner done. I've helped the kids with the school homework. And maybe half the kids is in bed. Maybe them teenagers not in bed just yet. But they probably on their cell phones anyway, okay, and not bothering the parents. So 8 o'clock may be worth it. I don't know, just a thought. Let's keep going. Okay, number 3, jumping to conclusions. Now, oftentimes when people are talking, we already know what they're trying to say. So we just hurry up the conversation. We just gonna jump to conclusion. That's not being an active listener. And that can cause a barrier because you're now rushing the speaker. And again, depending on their confidence level about the subject matter at hand, that just may not assist them with communicating effectively with you and knowing that they're going to be heard, because you're jumping to conclusions, which is in turn rushing the conversation to get to the end result. Like, you're just not trying to be sitting here for 20 minutes, right? You just want to go ahead and like, oh, I know what you're finna say. I know what this is all about. And then you are immediately responding 2 minutes into the conversation. So that's another barrier. Jump to conclusions. Number 4, lack of concentration and wandering, which is kind of the same thing. It's preoccupation of the mind, right? You're listening to respond versus to listening to hear. You're not concentrating on the speaker. You're not concentrating on the information at hand here. Your mind is wandering. Again, you're thinking about, what you're going to cook for the weekend, what tools you need to finish that presentation, who you got to go pick up from the airport. Did you take care of this and that for that? It doesn't matter. Lack of concentration, it just does something to someone, because the last thing that the speaker wants to hear you say is, "What you say? What were you saying? Go back. The speaker really doesn't want to hear that, right? And so if you're operating in a capacity to where you're not concentrating on the speaker, that can cause, some struggle. And it may turn into an argument, a colorful disagreement is what we like to call it, So every speaker wants to be heard. And it just does something to them when you can regurgitate back what they said as well, too, because that lets a speaker know that you were totally concentrated on them. And it also lets the speaker know that they are important to you at that time. Yes, you could be doing anything else, but in this moment in time, you're willing to hear them out. When you give your full concentration to them and you're choosing not to allow your mind to wander on other things. Okay. All right. So number 1, being hasty and impatient. Number 2, preoccupation. Number 3, jump into conclusions. Number 4, lack of concentration and or your mind just wandering, right? Thinking about how good that ice cream was last night, or how well you made your wonderful, whatever dish that you were trying to figure out, and it just came out marvelous the night before, and you can't wait to get home to eat the leftovers. You want to kind of monitor that and be aware if that's what you're doing when you're communicating with someone and when they're communicating with you. Because again, it's a barrier. It can cause a barrier with you not being an active listener, and therefore can cause some, discomfort in a conversation. Okay. All right. So the next one is differences in perceptions and experiences. What that means is when people say, well, that wasn't my experience. Right. So you cut them off, so that means you're no longer intently listening to them. Having differences of perceptions and experiences, it's okay to have a different experience than someone else. but it's still good to listen just to hear another person's perspective. But oftentimes we may shut it down because we're thinking, okay, well, what they're saying is not applicable to me, so I don't have to sit here and listen to you because what you're saying has no relevance to me. That's a barrier, guys. That's a barrier to being an active listener. It is. We know that we're going to have differences. Look, there's people from all people groups in this beautiful world. So people are going to have different experiences. People are going to have had different social upbringings. It just is what it is. But that doesn't negate the speaker wanting to be understood at that time or wanting to be heard at that time. Even in our own culture, whether it's two parents, one parent, whatever, any type of non-traditional upbringing, right? If a person is looking to communicate with you, then that means they probably trust you to even talk to you or deem you as some type of importance. So just because there's a difference in experiences, you don't want to immediately shut that person down just because it wasn't your experience. Okay. So we want to be conscious of that as we are going along this thing called life's journey. Right. And then lastly, because we're not going to be before you long, we really just want to kind of drop this off because, again, we will have a part 2. So, but we want to talk about the barriers. The barriers. If you found yourself doing any of this, guys, it's a barrier to being an active listener. And I can guarantee you, if you have been guilty of any of these traits, characteristics, I can guarantee you that the other individual that was sharing the information probably felt some type of way. And I'm sure there may have been a couple of colorful discussions as it relates to them feeling like they weren't being heard because you were not being an active listener. So yeah, last but not least, as it relates to the traits and characteristics of the barriers of being an active listener, is feelings of being overwhelmed with the problem. Feelings of being overwhelmed with the problem. A lot of times when people choose to communicate with you, you jump to offense, right? You catch feelings about what they're talking about. You get overwhelmed with the information at hand, and that information may not necessarily be for you, right? It may not. So because you inserted yourself in that conversation, you inserted yourself in that informational period, again, that knocks the speaker out of their position of opening up to you to have a conversation and to communicate effectively. That happens a lot. That happens a lot when the speaker comes to the recipient and the recipient just immediately thinks that the speaker is talking about them. And that may not even be the case. Unless it is. But let's say, for instance, if someone came to you to talk about, I don't know, guys, like anything. It could be anything. You think of something. Cleanliness, right? If I call someone and I want to talk to them about cleanliness, well, they may think that I'm talking about them. And I'm like, no, I'm just wanting to communicate about how certain things may be a pet peeve of mine, and or how I work hard on cleaning certain areas of my house, or how I keep my car, or how I keep my desk, or whatever, or how I, put up things in my pantry, how my shelves look, my drawers look, where my pots are. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is, whatever the it is, right? Someone that I may be communicating that to may catch offense and think that I'm saying, like my children, they may think that I'm going in on them and it's like, no, I'm just saying this is, how I feel about how things should probably be. And some people don't understand that, right? Actually, you know what? I just had a conversation with one of my parents. And one of my parents said, "Oh, well, gee, I just thought that you were OCD." No, I'm not OCD in that aspect. It's just something that's habitual, right? I don't have any type of mental attachment that makes me feel some type of way. It's kind of like whatever habits you have. Every day after 6 p.m. in my home, there's a certain routine that happens. And generally by a certain time every night, everybody is in the bed, lights are off, things are clean, put away. It's just what it is. That's not being OCD. That's just being organized. And, everyone in my home has a lot of things to do, including the children. So we just operate off of a routine, and the routine works. But someone may mistaken that as an OCD, or I'm going to stay out of Chi's way because of whatever. And it's like, no, I just want to talk to you about maybe my night was off because we didn't get to the kitchen until 9 p.m. And so therefore people didn't get into bed until 11:30 midnight, whatever. It's just, an example. But that could be a barrier. And clearly with that particular parent, that was a barrier for them. And between us that I didn't even know about, right? So had I not necessarily been actively listening to their response when I was sharing the information as the speaker, because I was sharing certain information, and then them as a recipient responded back and was like, blah, blah, blah. And I just figured that was your OCD. They caught feelings and they became overwhelmed with the problem because maybe they were operating in a certain capacity in my presence, but it was all because of what they thought. And it's like, no. And so think about how many times has that happened to you, right? How many times has that happened to you to where you are who you are, you do what you do, you have a routine, whatever the case may be. And then as you are communicating with people about a particular experience that maybe went against your routine, that person caught feelings and or became overwhelmed with what you were sharing because they inserted themselves as part of that problem. And so when you do that, when you insert yourself as part of that problem, unless the speaker is saying, I have a challenge with you, then don't assume that you have something to do with it, because that's a barrier. That is what can also lead to colorful discussions, right? So I hope you guys got this information. I hope it made sense to you. I hope you were able to kind of jot some things down and, kind of see how it was applicable to you, because these are absolutely barriers and they can absolutely interfere with being an active listener. And it can absolutely throw off the speaker in any situation where there is proper communication coming forth. So again, it's a skill. You have to practice at it. You're not always going to be perfect, but it has to be intentional though. It does have to be intentional, whether you're speaking to, like I said, your child, whether you're speaking to, any type of leader within your current employer, even your own parents, anyone, anything. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when you're calling the electric company and energy company about your bills. You make sure you are intensely listening so that you can understand where those extra coins came in from last month. So if we can give customer service our undivided attention, we can also do that with other human beings that we interact with every single day. So again, the barriers that we covered tonight were being hasty and impatient, preoccupation, jumping to conclusions, lack of concentration and mind wandering, differences in perceptions and experiences, and then the feelings of being overwhelmed with the problem. Okay. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I will be back with you next week with the part 2 of, okay, so Chi, now that we've covered the barriers, how can we become active listeners? And so there is where we will share 6 ways to be an active listener so that you can increase your communication skills on a daily basis, whether it's with friends and family, coworkers, business partners, and or the person in the grocery store or at the gas station. It doesn't matter. It's all about being an active listener. So we're going to learn more about that next week. Thank you guys so much for joining us and tuning in. We'll see you next week. Thank you guys. Have a good night.
She's sugary, she's spice. She is everything plus nice. Take her one-on-one class and she provides the best advice. She'll take you down to the trenches, but only to lead a new way. Only for the sake of you and your legacy to establish a new day. Let's give a warm welcome to the Chief Reprimander and the Supreme Hugger, Chi Smith.